Game engines. Everyone has a favorite. My name is Capsula and my favorite game engine happens to be one I'm making myself. But given the endless amount of people telling you not to make one, why the hell did I do that? Well, it all started about 3 years ago. As your average gifted kid, when the prospect of choosing a job showed up in high school, I wasn't too fussed. All of the options seemed absolutely miserable to not only study for, but also to do for a living. That is, until a shining beam of light descended upon my consciousness. My sibling introduced me to game development as a profession. Soon I found myself making little Unity projects to explore the engine, learn programming, and generally for playing around. For my graduation project, I even made a silly little fishing horror game. The code wasn't great, though. Aside from that, Unity is not all sunshine and roses. First of all, the engine is quite slow. Not the games, but the engine. Even starting a pre-existing project can take minutes, let alone making a new one. Secondly, the game object and component split bothers me, even though this wasn't the case at first, and I'll get into this later. No, the thing that truly invited me to investigate other engines was something much more nefarious, and you've probably heard about it. Yeah, okay. Maybe it's time to start looking at a different game engine, huh? People seem to be talking about this Godot thing. Godot? Oh, okay. It's open source and free, so let's just give it a try. It boots quickly. So quickly. It's almost exactly like Unity. Scene on the left, properties on the right. It's also a tree of objects, except instead the components are game objects. And I think this makes more sense. Why split an object from its behavior? And if you've ever used Unity, you know this split doesn't end up working out, because at some point you'll have single objects be large trees anyway. So this seems a lot more intuitive. So where Unity taught me basic programming, what did Godot teach me? That's right, the horrors of weak typing. Even though I knew very well that Godot has bindings for C#, which, together with Java, is the only language I've ever used, I decided to force GDScript onto myself. But even with its static-ish typing implementation, I couldn't enjoy it very much. Some more horrors Godot taught me later on was Vulkan. I wanted to use compute shaders, but even a basic shader took thousands of lines of setup. Contrary to Unity, I never ended up making a real game with Godot. Summer vacation is almost over though. Time to stop acting silly with Godot. I have a college to go to. Indeed, it was time to study game development somewhere. Even though we would eventually start working with Unity, that is not what college started out with. In the first semester we used Java processing, which I already had experience with, but the formal education did massively help with the quality of my code down the line. The latter 2 quarters of the year, however, there was something else. GXP is a bare-bones game engine made entirely in C#. Meant to be an in-between for Java's processing and Unity, it features a basic game object system, basic 2D graphics, questionable design decisions, and basic, completely unoptimized collision detection. The professors would explain that the engine is like this, so students don't rely on Unity's many features too much and actually learn how to program. However, nobody really enjoyed this, so GXP was quite unanimously disliked. I did make 2 cool games with this engine, but as quite the tinkerer myself, I couldn't help but change 1 or 2 things about the engine itself. GXP's lightweight nature helped greatly here, as adding or changing features was a very simple job of finding and replacing. We never got a pre-compiled version of the engine anyways. GXP is just a collection of source code, so changing it had a very low barrier of entry. In my game Slopper Guy, I added collision layers, allowing the distinction between attack colliders, ground colliders and character colliders, while in the first team project game I added depth sorting to allow characters to overlap more easily. The changes to GXP would not end there though. Nearing the end of the 3rd quarter, knowing the final group project using GXP was right around the corner, I decided to do something drastic. I could turn this engine into something else. This project would be the final one in which we were allowed to use GXP. I wanted something special, something that would impress everyone, something extra dimensional. And so, my efforts to create GXP 3D were born. The main difficulty with the update ended up being tech debt, but what I got in return was a very strong impression of what a game engine is supposed to be. Almost the entire engine was dedicated just to the rendering, and the game object updating code was quite foreign and strange. In the end, most of my efforts were concentrated on upgrading all of the classes, adding model loading, and upgrading the graphics. My buddy Ivan implemented the 3D collisions and the physics, which I never could have done myself, and he also made UI, so massive credit to him for that. I also made an editor, but it didn't end up getting much use in practice. What I did get from creating the editor though, was a better understanding of reflection, the ability of code to inspect itself. But the most important lesson in creating GXP 3D was that working on game engines is actually really fun. Like, really fun. There's a little problem around every corner, but this also means that there is always something to analyze, a puzzle to solve. With both Godot and Unity I kind of missed that. But I couldn't use GXP 3D forever. It's slow, it has extremely outdated graphics, the strangest programming choices, and a fair amount of technical debt. So what's my solution? Of course, making my own engine. Knowing rendering is more than half the engine, and all I had to do is start out with something that runs OpenGL and C# and then I'd be golden. And so, on a fateful night, I created Plimbo. And I just kept building on top of it, step by step, slowly accumulating a real game engine. My very own slopperengine. Slopperengine is a game engine built on OpenTK and C#. It encourages a modular design where no code is static and all code is an object in a scene. Methods can be added to the engine update loop by means of attributes, where high-ish performance systems call everything accordingly. Slopperengine also supports mod loading for every game that runs on it, whether the developers like it or not. It is open source as soon as I feel like publishing it on GitHub, and it has advanced shader support when I get to it. It also runs Beppu physics for high-performance 3D simulation. Slopperengine is also the only game engine that supports Plimbo. But that is my game engine. You clicked this video for an answer. Why the hell would you make your own engine? I can give you a couple of reasons. First of all, because you're bored. I know you are. You obviously have too much time on your hands. I sure do. Furthermore, all of the rest of game engines suck. You know it's true. Them being open source doesn't help enough in my opinion, because changing someone else's code is always too daunting. But lastly, you would make your own game engine because it's fun as hell. And I'll admit, it's not for everyone. Nothing is. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. And please enjoy maybe making a game engine. Peace.